All right, let's just jump right in. We all tend to think we see the world exactly as it is. But what if I told you you're living in a reality that your own brain custom built just for you? Today, we're going to explore that fascinating and sometimes kind of invisible gap between what's really out there and what we think is out there, and how that gap pretty much controls every single decision we make. You know what I'm talking about, right? You walk out of a movie and you're arguing with your friend about a character's real motivation. Or you're trying to convince a teammate that your way of handling a project is obviously the best. Remember that dress online? Was it blue and black? Or was it white and gold? It happens all the time because we're all experiencing the exact same world through a completely unique filter. Here's a perfect everyday example of this in action. The event itself, totally neutral. You and a coworker just passed each other in a hallway, but your perception immediately creates a story. I was just ignored, and that story triggers feelings, and it's definitely going to influence your next move. The really crucial point here is we don't react to reality itself. We react to our interpretation of reality. So what exactly is perception? Well, it's not like your eyes are a passive camera just recording the world. Nope. It's an active, creative process. Your brain is constantly grabbing all this raw data from your senses, and then in a fraction of a second, it's trying to organize it all into a story that makes sense. Perception is basically the powerful storyteller living inside your head. Okay, so if we all have more or less the same brain hardware, why are our internal stories so wildly different from each other? Well, it's because all that information we're taking in has to pass through a series of really powerful filters before it ever even reaches our conscious mind. And look, these aren't just minor things. They're literally the architects of your personal reality. Your past experiences, they create expectations for what's about to happen. Your mood right now, it can completely change the tone of an interaction. If you're stressed out, a simple question can sound like a huge accusation. Your values, your culture, who you hang out with, they all work together to shape what you even notice in the first place, and, just as importantly, what you totally miss. To deal with the millions of bits of information flying at us every single second, our brains just can't analyze everything. It's impossible. So they've developed some pretty clever but often flawed shortcuts to make sense of the world fast. Let's dig into how these shortcuts shape our view of other people. You do this 1,000 times a day without even realizing it. When you see someone do something, your brain's first question is why? We're automatically trying to attribute their behavior to a cause. Did that guy just cut you off in traffic because of who he is, a total jerk? Or was it because of the situation? Maybe he's rushing to the hospital. And our brain runs this super quick, subconscious check, asking these 3 questions. First, is this person acting kind of weird, or is this normal for them? Second, is everyone else doing it too? And third, do they always do this? The answers help us decide whether to blame the person or to blame the situation. If your friend who's always on time is late just this once, you're probably going to blame traffic, an external cause. But here's where our judgment gets really tricky. We have this massive tendency to blame other people's character for their mistakes. That's the fundamental attribution error. Yet for ourselves, we do the exact opposite. When we succeed, it's because we're brilliant, right? But when we fail, the circumstances were impossible. That's the self-serving bias, and it's a really powerful defense mechanism for our ego. Now, this one is huge. Our brain loves to be right. So it actively goes out and looks for evidence that proves what we already believe, and it conveniently just filters out anything that might challenge us. If you think your boss has a favorite, you're going to notice every single smile they share and completely miss all the times your boss praises your own work. Then you've got the halo effect. This is when we let one single impressive trait cast a positive halo over everything else about a person. Think about a celebrity you admire for their talent. You might just automatically assume they're also smart and kind and generous, even though you have absolutely no evidence of that. Their one talent creates this halo that makes everything else about them seem to glow. And, of course, there's stereotyping. This happens when we take a massive shortcut by applying a general belief about a whole group to one single individual. It's efficient, for sure, but it's also a deeply unfair way of sizing someone up, because it completely ignores who they are as a unique person and just relies on a simplistic and, let's be honest, usually wrong caricature. Okay, so we've established our perception is filtered, it's biased, and it's full of shortcuts. So what? Why does this matter so much? Well, because every single decision you make, from what you eat for lunch to huge career moves, is built on the foundation of that very perception. This right here is the absolute key to everything we're talking about. Your decisions can only ever be as good as the information you're feeding them. If your perception of a problem is off, if you've misjudged a person or misunderstood a situation, then the choice you make, no matter how logical it seems at the time, is going to be fundamentally flawed from the very start. So for a second, just imagine a perfect world. A world where you have all the time, all the information, and perfect clarity to make a choice. That's the whole idea behind the rational decision-making model. It's a neat, step-by-step process for finding the absolute best, most optimal solution. The only problem? Yeah, the real world almost never works that way. This is where we actually live. It's called bounded rationality, and it just accepts our human limits. We don't have all the info, we're always short on time, and our brains can't process everything perfectly. So instead of looking for the perfect solution, we just look for one that's good enough. It's a concept called satisficing. It's a mashup of satisfy and suffice. We find the first option that works, and we move on. And this really makes the difference clear. The rational model is like a supercomputer that's trying to achieve perfection. Bounded rationality, that's us, on a Tuesday afternoon with 10 minutes before our next meeting, just trying to find the first workable solution to a problem so we can get on with our day. And then there's our gut feeling, our intuition. Now, this isn't some kind of magic. It's your brain's massive processor recognizing a familiar pattern based on years of experience, all happening below the surface of your conscious thought. Think about a veteran firefighter who just gets a bad feeling and pulls their team out of a building seconds before it collapses. That's intuition. It's not magic, it's subconscious pattern recognition, and while it's incredibly fast, it's also shaped by all those same biases we've been talking about. All right, finally, let's pull all of this together and look at some of the most common decision-making traps that spring right out of these flawed perceptions and mental shortcuts. Think of these as the hidden landmines that can sabotage even our best intentions. First up, the sneaky overconfidence bias, where we just systematically think we know more than we actually do. Then there's the really powerful anchoring bias. The first number you hear sticks in your brain and just warps your judgment. A car salesman starts with a really high price, so the discounted price he gives you later seems like a fantastic deal, even if it's still way too high. And we've met confirmation bias before. It's not just a perception filter, it's a decision trap, where you only go looking for data that proves you were right all along. Next is the availability bias. After you see a news report about a plane crash, you might suddenly feel like flying is way more dangerous than driving, just because that vivid, scary example is fresh in your mind. Then you've got escalation of commitment. That's when you keep throwing good money after bad, doubling down on a failing project because you just can't stand to admit you were wrong. And we'll finish with hindsight bias, the classic I knew it all along effect, which tricks us into thinking that outcomes were totally obvious, but only after they've already happened. So after all of this, what's the solution? Well, it's not about trying to eliminate bias completely. That's probably impossible. The single most powerful thing you can do is just become aware of it. By understanding that your perception is a construct, and by knowing the common traps our minds tend to fall into, you can start to question your assumptions, to challenge your first instincts, and ultimately to make clearer, more conscious choices. And that leaves us with one last thought. It's incredibly easy to spot these biases in other people, isn't it? But it is so much harder to see them in ourselves. So as you go about the rest of your day, what's one assumption, one mental shortcut, one gut feeling that you're just going to pause and question?